As Walter Cronkite used to say, that's the way it is. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Michael Voris Show. I'm your host, Michael Voris, and just want to remind you that 1 week to go, right now, from now, is the St. Michael's Media Church Militant Strength and Honor Conference, the annual men's conference. So if you have not signed up for it, we still have a few seats left, so please click on that link. Come to it. It's here in Detroit next weekend, August 4th through the 6th. It's going to be a great time, wonderful time for about a couple hundred men, I believe, we have signed up so far. So come do the Band of Brothers thing, learn about the faith, learn more about the faith, all of the stuff that we do each year here. It's tremendous. So please sign up for that. Now, let's talk about something called the media spin, because this is very, very important to understand the process of how things happen. You begin with the sort of the academic notion. Maybe if you're sitting in a classroom, let me be your professor here. You begin with the academic notion that the media reports the truth. That's not true, but let's begin with that, because on the blackboard, that's what it's supposed to be. The media reports the truth. So the media has a number of tools available to all of them to get at the truth. If they're supposed to really be reporting on the government, they're the watchdog of the government. That's why they're protected in the First Amendment, that it's to give them great latitude to be able to ferret out corruption, whether it's moral corruption of the political leaders or financial corruption or whatever the case is. They sort of serve as the final check and balance on a system. So the Constitution, of course, provides for the three branches of government: the executive, the president; the legislative, which is the House and the Senate; and the judicial, which is the Supreme Court and the federal court system. Those three are supposed to keep each other in check and balances. If one goes too far, the other pulls them back, or whatever the case is. But sort of overriding all of that, the process of that is the free press, and that's why they are protected in the Constitution. So that's the big sort of professorial notes. Now, how does it actually work? Well, there has been very little in the history of media, news reporting media, in America, where things have been reported generally, accurately, and fairly. The media, as an institution, does not exist outside of human beings. Of course it does. It's human beings who run it, human beings who work in it, human beings who make decisions on what to run, what not to run, how to treat the stories it does run, how are those going to be presented, and all of that. So in that world, you're automatically open for bias. In the legal world, judges are human beings too. The question isn't, are you biased? Of course you're biased. The question is, are you able to lay aside your bias, at least in some reasonable fashion, where you're going to be open to hear the truth about something and conduct your affairs accordingly, whether you're the judge running the trial or the case, or you're the media reporting on it. Let's use an example. Let's say you are a typical pro-abortion loving media person, and you're covering a trial of a pro-lifer who is being accused of, say, firebombing an abortion chamber, and the person didn't do it, and the evidence as being presented by the prosecution is not convincing in any way that the pro-lifer is guilty of this. As a reporter who's pro-abortion, are you able to still report the story, even though you hate pro-lifers and you think abortion, everybody should have 6? Are you still able to report the story in such a way where you're just sort of laying out the facts of the case and saying, well, the prosecution didn't do this and the defense scored a big victory when they did that, and you're just, as the old Dragnet TV show used to say, just the facts, ma'am. Are you able to do that? Well, that's a good question. Most of the time, certainly in today's political and media climate, the answer is no. And that's true in the courts. It's true in politics. Everything now is about your agenda and making whatever it is you do, whether you're a judge sitting on a bench, whether you're a politician sitting in a state house or the Capitol Hill, U.S. Capitol Hill, or you're a media anchor or reporter. You have a worldview and you take your profession and you put it at the service of that worldview. So, when you are looking at an event like we did in Washington, D.C. the other week, what's the purpose of that? How do you make things, how do you use the media to help inform people? How do you do it? Well, as many of you know, I've been in the media my entire adult life, over 40 years now, so I have a pretty good familiarity with how things operate, both officially and really. So you go to, let's say, we have all these media there, and the point of getting them all there is to inform them about the need to defund the U.S. bishops. They need to lose their government funding. Maybe they need to lose their government tax-exempt status as well as part of that, but they at least need to lose the funding. If you take away the funding, well, they can't do the damage that they're doing to the republic with regard to, for example, climate change and immigration. They don't have the budget to do it, so they can't hire people to go push a cause that's anti-American. They may hold their anti-American views and keep holding them, but if they're not able to pay the bill to advance them, okay, well, their views stay with themselves. But as long as they have your government tax dollars to push all the climate change stuff and to push all the illegal immigration stuff, well, now they can do great damage. So the point of that is, let's end the funding to them. Good. How do you do that? Well, you get the message out to the media. What does the media do? Well, the media starts the conversation, and that's why it's so important to recap. We had this interview. We were on this show. We were on S.T.B. Bannon. We were on InfoWars. We were on One American News. We were on all these different, and we get the conversation going. And the backside of the media, they have something called impressions. How many impressions were made on people? Say that differently. How many people were impressed, not meaning stunned and going, wow, but how many people got the message? How many impressions were there from what you reported? Well, there's not an exact science to that. You don't know at any given moment how many viewers somebody may have on something. And I don't mean that is their YouTube live stream playing it or is there television on. I don't mean that. In the real world, how are people consuming information given to them? Well, just think about yourself. Let's say you're watching a video on your phone. You're saying, hey, this is kind of a cool video, blah, 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 and somebody's talking to you. And all of a sudden, a text message comes down on the top of it, and you start paying attention to the text message. And then maybe you open it up. You leave the video playing, but you open it up and you're reading the text, and your brain is over here in text land, not over here listening to this. If you're in an airport bar, for example, or any bar for that fact, and they've got, something's playing up there on ESPN. And, well, in the numbers world, they count that television, that monitor that's carrying the ESPN signal as a device, as a monitor, and they figure, hey, there's 100 people in that bar. Yeah, but you can't hear it. You're not you may be looking at it, as to distinguish from watching it. Watching it means you're kind of taking it in and paying attention to it, as opposed to just looking at something. Well, that's different. So when you're counting impressions, what are people's viewing habits? You're sitting at home and the phone rings, or the baby cries, or the dog takes a poop on the carpet, or somebody rings the doorbell, or your phone goes off and all of a sudden your fire alarm goes off because you forgot to take the whatever out of the oven. Stuff like that interrupts the viewing habit. You could have a television playing in one room and nobody's watching it, and you could have a television playing in another room, playing something different. You're watching something different, and there's 20 of you over watching whatever that movie is you wanted to watch that night. Well, how do you count that? So I'm just trying to give you the idea here that the how you get it, how many people actually get the message is entirely different from how many clicks did this thing get. Doesn't matter how many clicks it got. Behind that number is the real number, which is how many people absorbed your message. Well, that's always going to be fewer than people who just clicked on something. If you go through Google or YouTube Analytics, for example, you can click on something and you'll watch and say, whatever, 1 million people watched this for the first 30 seconds, and then they trailed off. Who knows? Maybe it was boring at the first 30 seconds, whatever the case is. But somebody else was watching a video and never got anywhere near 1 million. Let's say only got 10,000, but it stayed at 10,000 consistently for the whole 30 minutes. Well, if that's the case, you made an impression on 10,000 different people that the first 1 million spike and then drop off didn't. But the 1 million one looks a hell of a lot more sexy than the 10,000 viewer one does. So these are all the kinds of things you've got to take into account while you're trying to figure out what a media strategy is for helping drive a narrative. Now, in our case with the Washington, D.C. event, here was our thinking. We need to get politically conservative media there. Not the Washington Post, not the New York Times, not the LA Times, not the Chicago Tribune. If they want to show up and write about it, fine. But they're going to be writing to a specific audience who will agree with them, and their editorial take on it, disguised as news, will be, oh yeah, Church Militant sucks, and there's a bunch of right-wing crazies, and that, they hate immigration and whatever, so they're attacking the bishops. No, it's kind of the other way around. They'll report it that way. So we don't really care. If they want to show up and report on it, great. That was never on our radar to make sure that they were there. Who we did want to have there, or at least aware of it, and have them do reports on it, were, for example, S.T.B. Bannon of the War Room, and Epic Times, and InfoWars, and One America News, all these groups that reach millions and millions of people. And those audiences, and this is to make the distinction again back to this question of impressions, those audiences are much, much more dedicated to watching those networks and those live streams and those YouTube programs. They're much more dedicated to them, and they watch them with a much more intense passion. Thank you for watching The Michael Voris Show. If you'd like to watch the entire episode, please head over to churchmilitant.com and sign up as a premium member. If you need to sign up to become a premium member, go to churchmilitant.com/go premium.